All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you for your attendance this evening. It's very much appreciated and nice to see some familiar faces and lots of new faces here as well. Tonight's event, I know we're running behind schedule a little bit, but we should be able to make that up. That's no problem at all. So my name is Adam Hand. I am a Senior Solutions Architect at Crown. I've been running the user groups here in London for nearly 2 years now, roughly it is. And we've always had some interesting sessions and obviously questions from the audience, etc. And well, tonight we've got some really, really good sessions coming up. So I just want to briefly, there's a lovely picture of me there looking to the side. So just in summary, I tweet from at ahand8. Got a blog at adam-hand.com, and if anyone's got any questions, whatever afterwards, there's my email address at the bottom there. As up there, I've been working in Microsoft Technologies for the best part of 13, 14 years. Started off in kind of Exchange 5.5, early OCS days and early cloud days with BPOS, and I've been working through that ever since. This evening, we've got Caroline D'Souza, who's got a lovely session on Microsoft 365 security. We've got Alex on creative ways to identify technical solutions. We then got a break, and I'm sure most of you have seen all the Subway food sitting on the table already. So we've got that for dinner this evening for everyone. And then to kind of wrap things up, I'm going to be doing an Ignite recap, predominantly around some of the sessions and some of the key points that were there. But predominantly what I'm looking for is you can ask us any kind of questions you've got, and I'll try my best to try and answer them for you. So if you've got any interesting questions or anything you'd like to know or discuss around the Microsoft product sets or what was announced at Ignite, I will do my very best to try and answer them for you. And then finally, we're always on the lookout for speakers, etc., that can help us, because obviously I'm sure you get bored of me standing up here talking quite a lot of the time. We're always looking for not just speakers that are technologists and know what they're doing around various product sets, but also we're looking for people or customers really that have done interesting things as well that may be of useful to share with the wider product group. So if anyone is interested specifically for next year's events that we're looking at holding here, I would be very much interested in hearing from you. So to hand you over to Carolina, just needs a quick swap over.
Cool. Do I need to take this? Okay. Hi. Sorry for the delay. We just came from Reading, and traffic is not the best here in the UK. I'm Carolina, and I'm a modern workplace technical architect in the Microsoft Technology Center. So basically, my job is to tell stories on how modern workplace, how Office, security, and Windows will basically help you digitally transform your business. Just background on me, my accent doesn't lie. I'm not British. I speak very loud, so because I'm Portuguese. So if I'm shouting, just say, please, a bit lower. I started my journey at Microsoft in Portugal. In our services team, I started with security. My main focus was Microsoft Intune, and I started when Microsoft Intune was pretty rubbish. And now we've reached a very interesting point. And now I'm working with the entire platform. So that's basically me. I will talk about Microsoft Cloud App Security. Who in this room have heard about it? Whoa, that's quite an interesting number. Do you actually know what you heard about it? Do you know what is it for? Or just, don't worry, I'm a bit like you as well, so don't worry, so bear with me. Just to start our conversation, applications. We are moving to the cloud. There's a lot of people, the businesses in different places. Some haven't yet heard about Office 365 and everything. I had an experience today with a customer that Office 365 world was big bang kind of feeling. But a lot of more and more using cloud app based cloud applications. And it's hard to have visibility on those applications, and that's where the security journey starts. We know that gives a lot of flexibility to your users, but on the other hand, you need to make sure that you give the flexibility, you give them the mobility, but you make sure that that everything is secure. And basically, cloud app security has that into account. Do you have a roughly idea how many applications are currently in the workplace being used? It's not 28, I'm going to tell you it's not 28. How many applications do you think that might be laying around in your business? So, no one wants to try? How many applications do you think your users are actually using? Yeah, depends on how many people you have in your. If there's 5, there's only 5 applications, and that's definitely not true. We have run a study, and we know that at least 300 applications are being used in your business. And some businesses count 1,000 applications. And this is basically, for example, in a marketing department, they see they're running a new project, and they need to use this application. So Adobe Creative Cloud is a common one. And if you give a credit card to those users, they start like purchasing the applications, and you reach a point that you have a lot of information, corporate information in the cloud, in this kind of applications, and you have no idea that that was happening. So cloud app security definitely allows you to have an idea on which applications you have, how many are used, what is the data traveling between the applications. So we can do 3 things. We can basically discover applications, and we have at least 16,000 applications in our databases, and we can give you information around headquarters, users that access this application, IPs used, and also if you connect the service with Windows, you can see how many machines, which were the machines used to access these applications. You can also connect our tool with applications like Google, Box, Dropbox, so you can have some granularity in the policies you set around your business. And this way you can, for example, imagine that you have a very highly classified document that should be highly confidential, and someone puts that into the Google cloud, and you don't know. You want to make sure that you actually know what's going on. You can also have an understanding on odd behaviors. So, for example, have you ever heard about impossible traveling? Okay, so we can detect this kind of behavior. So imagine that, and we tried that, showed that in our facility. So basically, if you use Tor, interesting browser, you can log in portal.office.com, but you'll be traveling around the world before you reach the final point. And you can see that you've been, like, for example, Munich, Amsterdam, Prague, and then you accessed Office. And this is impossible traveling. So we detect that with our service as well. So as I mentioned, 3 things. We do cloud discovery, data protection, and threat detection. And threat detection is around those odd behaviors. So applications. As I mentioned, we assess applications based in their headquarters, IPs, users that access these applications, how many uploads, how many downloads, and all of this interesting information that you would like to know. For example, if there's a guy who was fired in your organization and suddenly you see like massive amounts of downloads, definitely that will be something to worry about, and you can set a policy for that and prevent those kind of uses with cloud app security. This will be the layout. I'll be showing a little bit later how it does look, how does it look in the actual portal, and how granular it can be with the applications. Sorry, some transitions that I don't know about. We can also set conditional access. Who has played around with this? Good experience? Okay, so for those who don't know, maybe there's a few more transitions to add. Sorry. Yep, yep, yeah, okay. Okay, that's it, all the transitions. So basically, conditional access, as the name says, for you to access something, you need to meet some expectations. And this will be for to access some of the applications. So a possible use, for example, leveraging, for example, Intune, is for you to access the Office applications, you need to have your device enrolled in Microsoft Intune, but also it has to be compliant. And being compliant means, for example, your organization says that a compliant device is a device that is encrypted, has a password, has this and that. And these are some of the conditions you can set up with conditional access. One alternative could be, okay, it's not enrolled in Microsoft Intune, but in that case, you can, instead of using the applications that you install in the device, you can use the web browser as an alternative. So there's a lot of settings, as you can see, you can define, and you just need to play around with them. Data protection. This is another capability around cloud app security. So we have a lot of confidential information, and only knowing the applications you're using is not enough. You need to make sure that the documents, for example, documents with financial PII of your organization, that information is well secured and is kept in the right places. So we do have some data protection policies around with cloud app security. And one very interesting is integration with Azure Information Protection. Who has heard about Azure Information Protection? It's quite a cool one. Okay, cool. We also can leverage the data loss prevention policies that we have and some other policy settings. I'm going to be very quick in the presentation because I really want to show the cool stuff. With the integration of AIP, or Azure Information Protection, basically it allows you to understand the documents that are classified, for example, as highly confidential, and those should also be protected and encrypted in case you haven't done that in your policies. And you can see, you can make sure that the classification keeps the same, even though using portal.office.com, Office applications, but also using other resources like the Google Cloud, or there's a consistency in the classification of the document. More animations I didn't know about. Cool. And finally, the threat detection. And this bit, we're basically leveraging machine learning and some insights from our graph security. Sorry, my voice is just dying today. So basically, we understand suspicious logons, that impossible traveling will be one, some suspicious activities from suspicious devices, or even possible threats ransomware. That'll be very useful if we had this in place a couple of years ago when we had that incident, let's say. So that's threat detection. So this is cloud app security. In theory, I will be showing how it works and how it looks like. So far, is there any questions? I don't want to be boring, sorry.
Is different from what?
Sorry?
Is different from what? When you start this, why cloud app security is different from what?
I'm lost, sorry, I'm lost.
So the heading, why cloud app security is different.
Oh, okay, so.
Different to what?
Okay, so basically, this is maybe the title is not the best one, but this is a summary on the advantage of using cloud app security and what cloud app security does and why it's outstanding, taking into account the market. I do not know what our, sorry?
Yeah, I think as well more different from what you're probably used to using in your organisation, so it's offering you something that
Yeah,
maybe
but
you
stuff
didn't
like
have.
device and integrity and stuff that's been out for years.
Yeah.
You know, Citrix were doing it 15 years ago. You know, what's your device? Where is it? What you can access? from a Wi-Fi, what you can access from desktop, what you can access from home. So a lot of that stuff's been out there for years.
Yeah.
So I just wondered what it's different from.
So basically, this is one of the components we have in our security suite. And basically, our solution is how well it integrates with the rest of the solutions we have available. So we are leveraging the discovery capabilities of cloud of security, but we also leveraging the remaining security solutions, because we've seen that one security solution in place doesn't make anything, because people can find workarounds and it's very easy to, and it can never reset someone's brain. So this is definitely and not only cloud of security, what differentiates in the market is a very connected solution. It connects with our security solutions that we have in place. It connects with our applications, the Office application that we built and we take care of. But also we are connecting with other services, because we do know that not everyone works the same way and leverages other applications to be successful in their workplace. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question. Sorry. Yeah. 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 For we are so also the security graph. Basically, we have the business users that connect with our services, but we also have the consumer ones, and we learn from both the consumer behaviors and from the corporate world. That's why our solutions are very rich, because we leverage that knowledge and those capabilities that we've catch up for the years. We can detect misbehaviors and odd activities, let's say, around that, using that. Just to take a look at the Cloud of Security portal. So I've connected to two. This is this one that we're actually using for customer demos. And in the cloud discovery bit, as you can see, we've detected the 300 applications that, obviously this is not a real organization, but the idea is to behave like one. So we found 300 different applications in the workplace, and we seen almost 2,000 different IPs that were used to access those applications. And we also have the landscape of the users and how many, what was the actual traffic, how many downloads and uploads, and it totalizes like 2.8. But it can be more granular around that. So, for example, these are some of the applications, and the applications are scored from 1 to 10, when 10 is good and 1 is like, ugh, do you really want to have that in your organization? So you can filter here. I would say from 1 to 3 is like very poor applications where that doesn't meet any compliancy standards, and there's a lot of information that is lacking in the application. Once this syncs and updates, you'll see that some of the applications are in the consumer world. I've seen some of the applications I've seen here were, for example, the iCloud, the one from Apple that we use as consumers, but it's an application that is also being used sometimes to upload corporate information. And if you want to understand a little bit more around the application, you can see some details. So you have the information about headquarters, when it was founded, country was based, but if you go to the security and to the compliance standards, we see that that's why the score is so low, because basically it's not doing anything that it should be doing. If you go take a look to one application, like the Office application, it's not to be fancy around that, but it's a good application to use. You can see that our application, oh yeah, I forgot. Let's go back to this one. you can see that some of the applications are well rated, and you can see, I will show you why. There's a lot of information around the application. If I go back, okay, so Dynamics. Alex here is an expert in Dynamics. And you can see a lot of information around the application. You can see that, again, that basic information around where it's based, who's the country, the parent company. But then you can see the security and some compliance standards. And you can see that our application is doing really well. For example, in this case, and in the other case, we see HIPAA. This is just an American health standard. So for the UK, it wouldn't be important. So you can always filter this down because it doesn't make any sense for you to take into account the score of the application for this policy. So if I go to IP addresses, if I go to the application, let me see if I open the application. Okay. And I'm going to see who are the users, how many downloads and uploads I have around that, and also if I had connected this to my Windows machines in my environment, I would be able to see, be more specific around which were the machines that were used to access this application. Okay, it's taking some time. So the users, for example, we can see here. Okay, so and you can also have an idea of traffic, 1 mega upload, some of the number of transactions, and when they last happened. And if you want to also see some alerts around that, you can always have this information here. Around the policies, you can be very granular. For example, as I mentioned before, you can also say that mass downloads is a concern, and you can create a policy around that. For example, this is one of those policies, and we have added a severity for that. In this case, is high severity. But if you can create many policies around access, app discovery, and also file policy. So definitely, so if I try to, for example, access policy, I can play around with that and define something around access applications.
I have a question.
Yeah, sorry.
Can you profile individuals to say this is their normal activity, and another individual, this is their normal activity?
So there's a threat detection, and that's a bit in the threat detection. So this might take a while to, I think we give it a week to have a decent understanding on the organization behavior. And taking that to account, you can see what is for example, a common, for me, Carolina, my typical access to machines is this way. This is my workflow on a daily basis. If something changes, that will be like, there's something off here. And you can, I think you would get an alert in your cloud of security.
So you profile individuals?
You don't profile them like manually. It's like, again, the security graph, that's something that is done like through machine learning. That's how we profile the typical access, the typical usage of someone in the company.
So would it say person A typically does 300 downloads a day and person B only does 10? And that's normal?
Sorry?
Would it say person A does 300 downloads a day and that's normal? And person B does 10 loads a day and that's normal? Does it do that?
It doesn't, like, it doesn't give you a report on that saying this guy just does this and this guy does that. But through machine learning, we know that's the typical behavior for that, for user at oneMTC.net. That's a typical behavior. If something outstanding happens in their behavior, that will create an alert and something that you should, as an admin, should assess that and address and see what's going on.
So it's a lot of times around the user, what they're using to access, where they're accessing it from, as well as, like you say, some of the behaviours. So if something happens as a regular, like you say, the downloads, if they initiate a mass download and they've never done that before, that would flag an alert. But it's not.
So it must give a record of an individual approach.
Yeah.
So it's back. So
But it's not a proper report. Your admin won't see this guy does, this is their behavior, this is the, it's like we have that in our backend, in our Azure solution, we have everything recorded, but we're not giving you a report to your admin saying this is, do you have 5,000 users? Anna does this, Louisa does that, Carolina does that. It's just, the solution, the machine knows, but it's not going to give you a detailed report on that. This is some of the, okay, so I have access, block access here, but I can come to this one. So this is, so if I want to create a policy again, so this is, for example, a file one, secret recipe sharing. This is a luxury donut organization, and there's a secret donut recipe. So we want to keep track on that recipe and make sure that we don't lose the secret of our business. So this would be a way of we could create a policy for these cases to make sure that we keep our moneymaker alive and secure. And this is some of the settings you can always set up and configure and make sure. Yeah, there's a lot you can play around. This is just a sniff around cloud app security. And here's some of the alerts for you to see what's been happening. You can see all take into account your policies and your also your typical organization behavior. You can see some of alerts around the organization. I think there's a few ones. Oh, there's an interesting one because, again, I mentioned that we tried that one that we log in Tor that goes around the world before we reach. So I have an alert for impossible traveling. And you'll see here my user been doing impossible traveling, and that will be one of the alerts that we have configured. We have configured a policy for that, and that will pop up in this alert page when it does its job. I don't want to drag you on security and be dull and all of that. This is just a small flavor of cloud app security, and a very, very, very even smaller flavor of our security bundle, of our security stack that we provide and share with you at Microsoft. Yeah. So for this one, for you to have this visibility, basically just need to upload your organization proxies. Yeah, there's a way of doing that automated, and basically it just runs through those proxies and just provides you this insight. So it provides you the applications, the user's behaviors, and all of that. Basically, just need to upload that. There's obviously the integration with Azure Information Protection, for example, and that will require obviously the solution, having that solution in your organization. But for you to have most of these, what I've shown, the applications, all of that, you just need to upload your proxies. Yeah, that's the one I didn't show because we didn't connect it. And that's the one that you see the machines, and you can be more granular around that. We did not have nothing around that here. Okay, this is not doing, so I'm going to give you.
You just need one license for one admin.
Sorry?
You just need a single license for an admin for the whole organization.
The licensing bit, I'm going to say I'm not an expert, but I do believe that you don't need to have, if you have 5,000 users, you don't need to have 5,000 licenses, but I'm not. You need to? Okay, see, I'm not a licensing expert. So you need to, sorry. Sorry?
Well, okay, I know I just got one for the admin, and all that's appeared, and it seemed to search across everybody in the whole organisation. So does that mean I'm in breach of licensing?
It falls into the,
it's just not enforced.
It falls into the grey area because there's a few bits like that, like the advanced threat protection as well for Exchange and that if you add one license, it protects it. However, to be compliant, you should actually
What's the going rate per month per person per license? Average?
I have no. I would. The thing is, the value of our solutions. We have the Microsoft 365 bundle. Basically, it gives you Office, the security stack, and also the license for Windows. So we are moving towards that kind of solution, let's say, because collaboration for you. We see that people work and collaborate differently, and some people love Teams and use Teams a lot, but there are a few people that just need a few bits in this solution, but still it's good to have it available for everyone to take it.
Ballpark is £5 twice an hour.
I have no idea, to be fair.
£2 a day.
Jeez, you know these things well.
Any advice on that?
I'll give you £1.74.
Yeah.
But you can get some of it free as well. This is EMS.
Discovery, yeah. Okay, so the licensing experts here, that's not me, are saying that for the discovery bit, E3 will be enough. For the protection side of things, which I find it important, it's E5. I don't know who. Yeah. Yeah, we have 2 tiers.
There's also certain modules you can buy as one-offs, but when you start mounting them up, you might as well just go and get the fleet.
Yeah.
So we tend to find when we're putting in with customers, is look at what they want, and then usually by the time they've got 1 or 2, we just put them up on they're pretty much there anyway, and they get more from it.
I'll be scared the crap out of them.
Always important. Yeah.
How does it work technically? How does cloud app security gather all the data? In my mind, there's some device or server that sits between your internet connection and the Office network.
You can get the logs from the firewall and connect it to your firewall logs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To a firewall.
Yep.
Okay, that's very
It's fiddle on Viagra. Just capture.
But if you want to play around just once, you just need to upload once the logs, and you'll see a lot of things happening. If you want to go, obviously, build a proper thing for your organization, you definitely have to connect with your firewall logs. Yep. Thank you for helping me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see what's going on, because I'm not sure that connects into the Wi-Fi. Should we take a couple of minutes for everyone to do what they need? You already saw my slides. Go home now. Is everyone fine, or do you want a couple of minutes to refresh your drinks or anything? Are you still good to stay in the room? Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. Is everyone still here? Everyone still awake? Thank you so much for joining us this evening. To the ladies in the room, I have something to say for this week. Happy Ada Lovelace Day for all of us women in STEM. Great week to celebrate, right? And thank you for being here tonight. To the rest of you guys here, you can celebrate us. Don't worry, we have a few drinks and some Subway sandwiches to have a proper, elegant celebration later today. And I promise you that I know I'm the only person that stands in between those sandwiches and you, but I will make this quick and hopefully enjoyable. So I'm here today to not talk about a specific technical solution, but to talk a little bit about some of the ways we make technical decisions. And I am going to focus particularly on the creative side. And I promise you that there is a good reason for that, and it can be enjoyable for you too, even those of you who are deeply technical and might not see the whole point in this creative thing, okay? So bear with me on this one, please. Before we get started though, I do have one question. Who decides what technology you use? At home, can you please raise your hands for me if you decide what technology you use in your personal life at home. That can be your phone, it can be your IoT device, your smart meter, your tablet, your home laptop, what your kids use if you have any, what your neighbor's kids use if you don't have any, anything like that, yeah? Keep your hands up for me, please. All right? How many of you think that decision is an easy one? Keep your hands up if you think it's easy. Wow, so we have quite a wide audience that believes that. Great. All right. Now, can I please get the people that decide what technology they use at work to raise their hands? Ooh, we have a few decision makers in the room, so applause for the wonderful people that make those decisions. Thank you for your investment in Microsoft. Wonderful. Right, keep your hands up, please. Okay, it's about 5 of you anyway. How many of you believe that that decision is easy to make? Oh, you do? You do? Great. Well, that's fantastic because, you know, based on my experience with my customers, there are a few things they say when they talk about decisions and technology. First of all, obviously, there are a lot of providers in the market, and one thing that they notice is that it's hard to decide on what product is the right one for their business. Would you say you still think it's easy, even with all of the offerings in the market? As long as it does the right job, right? You're quite happy. Great. Well, we'll keep going with you. We'll convince you otherwise. How about risk, though? Would you feel that if you would be the decision maker for the organization that you work for, and you had to choose the one provider that gives you that technology that the rest of your colleagues are going to use, would you be happy to take that risk for the entire organization? How does that make you feel? Do you sleep well at night, sir? So the gentleman over here is saying that he's using software to battle that risk and protect himself against threats. So remember, everyone, if you ever make a technology decision, make sure you get the software that also protects you against risk. Thank you very much, sir. How about money? How do we feel about that? Is it expensive to make technology decisions? Yes, sir. Yeah, so the process of making a decision is expensive, right? And then there are subscriptions, and then you think you're paying for something, but then you need an implementation partner, and that comes at a cost. Then the bloody solution is custom, and now you need to pay regularly. Then you need to pay for the upgrades, so it's an expensive process. I'm sure pretty much everyone in the room agrees. And in our personal lives too, because we are buying devices basically almost every year now. And if we're not getting them every year, they are being given to us on our subscription type of contracts, right, from our providers. Even with the smart meters, hands up, how many people got calls from their providers about the bloody smart meters, please? They are forcing them down our throats, and if you want to switch provider after you get one of those, good luck to you. Anyway, moving on. So, because of these reasons, there's something else that tends to happen that my customers come to me to talk about. The fact that a certain number of their IT projects fail, but why? And I put X over there for a simple reason. Now, I could have chosen one of the statistics that Gartner or Forrester or the CIO magazine used to say that, you know, something between 30 to 60% is kind of like the average that they tend to go for every year, to say that that's the number of IT projects that fail. But it's not important how many exactly, but the reasons why that happens. So can I get some suggestions from the experience people have from the audience around why IT projects fail? Yes, sir?
We have a year to deploy it. We usually spend about 10 months evaluating everything, smash it in the last 2 months, while then digitize all your requirements to change them.
All right. So it's basically a question of time and the fact that by the time you get there, the requirements would change and the solution doesn't fit anymore. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
You say although technology could be the enabler to provide better solutions, but it should be complemented by processes as well, understanding what changes in the company or the client's processes have to be in pair with the technology.
All right, so processes that come with the technology. How about Yeah.
focusing on the technical delivery, not on the user adoption. So
Wow, user adoption, that's a big one. How about you, sir?
Yes, so there's a lot of investment from these solutions. They're actually understanding the business needs.
Mm-hmm.
So when the solution is deployed, there's no user adoption, and you might not even be fulfilling all the purpose for the user.
So lack of understanding of business needs and some communication there as well, right? How about the ladies in the room? Can I get one from the ladies, please? Come on. Yes, please.
On time and on balance.
All right, so time as well, huge important and balance, right? How about you?
Sometimes there's a lack of this, understanding of what the software is and what it will actually do by the people who pay for it,
Mm-hmm.
rather than the people who will actually be implementing and using it.
Yeah, so lack of understanding around what the software does and the difference between the people that would actually use the service versus the people that actually are empowered to pay for it. So now, should we see if I got some of these right when I prepared for this session?
So you could have asked these questions 30 years ago.
And they would still be the same answers, right?
Motivation, you name it. Nothing.
Born 30 years
Nothing
ago.
has, nothing has changed.
So as this
Say 40 years ago. Nothing has changed.
As this session is recorded, I am going to repeat this remark because I believe it's very valuable. So someone from the audience just said that if you ask the same questions 30 or 40 years ago, the answers would have been pretty similar and nothing has changed. But let's just see if I got some of these right. And if you guys disagree with me, please do say. So I said isolated decision making. And when I said this, I was referring at those lovely people from the IT teams that come and visit our technology center, and they believe that they know exactly what everyone else in that company wants and what the right solution is without asking them, but they do believe they're right. Next, insufficient funding and resources. And for this, I blame at times people like us that go and sell software to other people and would tell you that the licensing cost for something was, who said £2.80? £2.80. £2.80 is a good deal, right? You'll get something for £2.80. But then someone somewhere would go and actually build a budget based on that. But they don't consider that there are implementation costs, that perhaps there would be some extra requirements during that project that we haven't really forecasted for. So the costs end up growing and growing at times. I'm not saying this happens all the time, but usually people might tend to run into this issue. This also happens when sometimes we might go for the cheaper solution in the market, but then it turns out it doesn't quite do what we need it to do. So then we pay a lot of extra money for that custom implementation work that we need to have the product we were initially purchasing. Poor or lack of communication. And what does this mean? Basically, sometimes those lovely IT teams that decided what product to buy, they also thought that it would be great to work in isolation and not tell anyone if they've made any progress on this project. And they might just turn the new thing on one day and ask everyone to use it and expect that nothing bad is going to happen as a result of that. And although that does sound quite crazy, trust me, it still happens in some places. Bad planning as well, because sometimes people think that they can do this whole thing with a team of 3 people in-house, no support from elsewhere, and it's going to be great and it's going to deliver exactly what we want. And unfortunately, that does create some trouble down the road, and it is down to bad planning. And last but not least, but most important for me, and one that I get a lot of questions about, is the lack of adoption. So a lot of people come to Microsoft and they see these new amazing things that we have, like cloud app security or Teams or the latest and greatest, shiniest toy that has a lot of AI embedded in it, and it will give you the most amazing insights the world has ever seen, and you need to have it tomorrow. But how do they get their users to adopt it? And this is probably the top question IT teams do end up asking me. And yes, it doesn't just happen overnight, and it doesn't just come with buying a solution and then expecting people to just start using it. because that's okay, right? So now that I kind of gave you a description of what the problem is, should we talk about what we can do differently and this creative value proposition that I have for you guys? But before I show you what it is, I'm gonna tell you why I think it's a good idea to do it that way. So let's go back to basics. I think, you know, before technology or any amazing shiny new toy you can get of a technical description, everyone was equipped with one of this and still is, pretty much. Would you agree? Yeah, it's fine. Everyone has it. Great. Hey, everyone has it. I'm not saying how functional it is, okay? So for some of us, it might be slightly damaged from all of those customer meetings, myself included. So there are a couple of things that I want to focus on when we look at the human brain. Now, I'm not a neuroscientist, but I have read some interesting things that I use as an argument in my proposition. Neocortex. Has anyone heard about this? Does anyone know what it does? So basically, it's a massive part of our brain that differentiates us a lot from other mammals on the planet. And the reason why this is quite special is because it helps us with reasoning and judgment. That's where, when we listen to new information or when we see a new product, that's where those neurons fire up and try and make sense of what we see. Now, keep that in mind for now and bear with me, okay? Next one down the road, and please excuse my drawing, your brain doesn't look like this, I can assure you. If we cut one open right now, it won't be that colorful, don't worry, okay? So the next one is the limbic system. How about this one? Does anyone know what this is responsible for? No neuroscientists tonight. Yes, I can look like an expert, amazing, cool. Sorry? There's that too, but what we have here, that's more, okay, so that's actually the one down below, the reptilian one, which is responsible for our instinct. And I'm very happy I know that answer. But what this is responsible for is our emotions and memory in general. So how we respond to things and how we relate to them from an emotional perspective. And now we're gonna do a little bit of an exercise. Now, who in this room is scared of heights? And now, who am I gonna pick on? Let's see. I'm gonna go for the gentleman at the back. Right, this is the Shanghai Oriental Pearl Tower. How tall would you reckon this is? 100 meters. That's very, very, very wrong because it's about 468. Now, what would it take to get you up there? Would you do it for 500 pounds, sir? Yes. You would do it for 500 pounds? Well, how disappointing. Can I just say that he's not scared of heights? Because you could give me 500 quid and I would not do that. All right, so for everyone else that is scared of heights, would you do it for 500 pounds? Raise your hands if you would. We have one, so can everyone give me 1,000 pounds because we're gonna go there tonight. No, I'm joking. So for those of you who kept your hands down, would you do it if you knew that by the time you come back down, someone would give you the cure for cancer? Would you do it? Raise your hands if you would. All right, so already we're starting to see a bit more motivation. And there's a good reason for this, right? So when you think about technology, going back to this, for some people, going onto a new platform, giving up on their application that they've been used to for the past 20 years, doing something that is totally outside of their comfort zone and might put their job at risk, might make them feel like this when they are scared of heights and they have to be up there, and this is completely uncomfortable and horrible, and they don't understand why they need to do it. But appealing to those sides of their brain where they can have an emotional link to why they would be there. So for some of you, the cure for cancer already triggered, actually, screw that fear. You know what? I'm going to get up there because it's going to mean I'm going to save a bunch of people in the world. Or it's going to mean that maybe I had someone in my family that was affected by cancer and I could have done something to change that, right? So that emotional side already can help us motivate people to do something that they would not do for money, they would not do for anything else. I'm not saying to tell your employees that they're gonna get a cure for cancer if they use Office 365, because I can't promise that, but bear with me on this one. The reasoning side of the brain, helps us get people motivated to do something. And the only way you can get them to reason and to also have an emotional link to what they are about to do is to think about it this way. The difference between I think this is good for you versus you think this is good for you. And let's think of a great example about this. Has anyone tried to feed children broccoli? And not the sort of children that actually enjoy it? Because I'm not talking about that case, right? So trying to explain to them why broccoli is going to be good for them from your own perspective is never going to work. They have to find some reason within them, something they are preparing for, something that they are going to be cool at school with, or that is going to impress their peers, or that is very important for them, that you have to link that broccoli to make it work. Pretty much the same with technical solutions that people don't understand the reason for, right? If you do go as someone from IT and say, you know what, we need to change our platform because we're experiencing a lot of security breaches, we need to be compliant with a lot of regulations, it's old, it's expensive, blah, 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 blah. Why am I gonna care if I work in sales that you think that we need to change it? If what I have today works for me, even if it's crap, don't get me wrong, because many of them are. But if they strongly believe that that's all they need, or if they believe it's good because they get away without doing what they are supposed to, why would they want to support you in your decision of implementing a new solution?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because this is very, very, very simplistic, isn't it?
Pretty much, yes.
I'll give you an example, a really, really, really simple example.
Okay.
In organisations that have worked for X number of years, changing passwords.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Got a user community of hundreds or thousands, okay? And everybody reads about breaches every single day of the week, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
But you try to get, we can't motivate people to understand the requirement for changing passwords. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really, really simple thing you think the world would understand about now. So motivating on a really simple level is very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It's not new. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs and all that stuff. You motivate different people depending on where they are. And a really simple one is password changing, and nobody gets it.
Good.
They don't have to get it, they just have to do it. The company detects they have to do it, they do it, or they get out of the job.
But we're talking about motivation.
All right.
I'm talking about taking people on the journey.
But also, if you're in a job, if I hire somebody to do a specific thing, and they say yes to that contract, they do as I tell them.
I've got it, but that is not motivation.
Well, it is.
But what we're talking about here is
get out of the job.
what we're talking about here is you succeed.
They don't do that all the time. They don't like you, it's like you're sat
What we're talking about, you succeed when you motivate people. You don't succeed when you say that's the way it's going to be. And the whole premise here is you're motivating people to want to take on board change.
So can I just say what we're talking about for the benefit of the audience that won't be able to hear you? So in the room, we have a gentleman that has given me a challenge. He said to me that in the organizations that he's worked for, there are people that won't even change their password, although they are being made aware of how many risks that exposes them to, and also the company. Now, we also have another gentleman who believes the right way to motivate those individuals, or perhaps encourage them slightly to change that password, is by telling them that if they don't do it, they are going to be fired, which, bottom line, I don't disagree with you, why not? If that, I'm sure that would be quite motivating. But, I'm very lucky to work for a company that aims to make the world passwordless. So if you want me to give you a very short answer to that question, here we go, my company solved it for me. That's why we're moving to a passwordless model. And there is a lot of reason behind that, right? So people hate to have to remember those passwords. Sometimes it's actually riskier because they end up writing them on a piece of paper and putting that on the monitor. Now they lose that device or someone passes by. Guess what? That password is already compromised. That information is already out there. So I think what you have to think about in that scenario is not necessarily how you force them to do something that they aren't good at, but how you find a solution that helps them and enables them to do it in a better way that works. From my perspective, those are devices that can get around the password.
That would motivate everybody.
Right? So
the motivation is product.
exactly.
The product is you will never have to change your password again, and you get buy-in like that.
There is a reason why that product was invented,
So
right?
Then you're motivating people by the product.
Mm-hmm. But that's because, you know,
Within.
there have been a lot of years of observation, perhaps even as many as you have. And people realized, not from my side, not from my side. Look, the company I work for was there way before I was born. It's safe to say that, right? Actually, my first manager at Microsoft joined the company the year that I was born, so do not worry, I'm not talking about my own observation. But what I'm saying is that in your particular case, and I will end that just to move forward with what I have to say, is that there are some circumstances where you have to look within the product and within IT at also what can you do to help differently, because what you try to get people to do isn't working. And in our company, we've noticed that because people still write passwords on pieces of paper and put them on the device they need to log into. And if you don't believe me, tell me what people in your family are doing. Right? So the solution there, no matter how much you say to someone to do something that we know now for centuries they are not good at, is to look at the product, look at the processes, and figure different ways to help them. And nowadays, even if you don't have a Windows Hello enabled device or something that reads a fingerprint, looks at your face and builds a numerical pattern that can recognize your own features, you can buy external things, dongles, where they can scan your fingerprint. There are cheaper ways to do this. That technology is far more accessible than it was even 5 years ago. And I am going to move on, but I welcome you to chat to me in our break about all of these things, right? Cool. So, a few examples of things that I've tried that have worked with people. Journey mapping things. Has anyone done these before? Hands up, right? Did you enjoy them? No. Right. So when done in a way that actually looks at helping people. What? If someone did that for you. So you don't want people to really understand how you work. You don't want people to understand how you work? So, yeah, that sucks if someone actually understands how we work. How about if someone understands how you feel about things that don't work for you? Yeah, so obviously we already have someone who's upset way before we even started understanding why they're upset. So there's a lot to think about solving that. It's probably, nothing to do with technology to begin with. We'll get there. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is that a good idea when thinking about what solutions to implement in an organization would be to involve the people that are going to use them way before you actually buy the technology. Because if you don't know what they do, first of all, like how many people in IT actually know the business process that a salesperson has to go through from identifying a deal to closing it and renewing it? Not really, right?
It's what business analysts do.
Right.
They've been doing it for years.
But your job is to buy the technology that they are going to use to do that. It's a process, right? But nevertheless,
There are people in that process gathering requirements.
nevertheless, a process that seems to be the money-making engine of a company that pays for that IT product and the people that work with it. So, with with that being said, I think it would be quite valuable to understand what these people do, if they are quite frustrated about how they do it, but, you know, even if there are things that are working quite well today, because we want to keep those, or we want to find ways to nurture those things and not destroy them with a new technology implementation, because they're going to hate us for it, basically. And that's one good reason why technology implementations don't work. And then most importantly, you want them to tell you what is the change they need to actually do their job in a better way. And this doesn't stop with the sales team. This can be done for any team in an organization. I mean, I do these things not just looking at business personas, I also do them from a consumer perspective as well. Because, you know, I don't know if you've heard about that thing where the customer experience is like the single biggest differentiator for what people pay for nowadays. Right? If you have, it's pretty cool to do one of these to understand where the customer is frustrated when trying to buy your product and where the journey doesn't work, and they end up ditching it for a better offer with a more enjoyable experience. So keep this in mind. Now, an example of an output. Now, did I do this work? Who believes I did that? You believe I did this work? Why would I do this when I can get like the people who want the solution to do my job for me? What are you talking about? I don't go to work. I go to work to just encourage people to do my job. Oh my God. So for reasons having to do with people's privacy and preserving their identity and all of that GDPR stuff, I can actually show you pictures of the customers that were doing this. But it's not my handwriting, because you'll see mine in a minute. What we've done here is had the people from that specific sales team, about 5, 6 of them, so we can get a mix of opinions and enjoy while they're arguing about what is actually important and frustrating, because don't you get a lot of joy from that? People who disagree, amazing. So we focused on their process, we focused on how they felt about some of the things that didn't work, and how they felt about some of the things that were actually working very well that we wanted to keep. But most importantly, we got them to identify what changes were needed in their own words, right? And don't expect sometimes business people to be very good at articulating that from a technical perspective. That's what our job is, and the job of providers, to kind of help you translate some of those things into actual solutions that can do that stuff. But they tell you what change they need in order to have a better work experience, in order to make more money for the company, in order to help more customers, in order to buy your product. Does that make sense? Right? Do you think that helps with buying technology? Do you think that stimulates those parts of the brain, the reasoning, the emotional side? Right? Emotional side, reasoning. Okay? When you go back and implement your technology solution, instead of just dumping some random training on people, might as well consider going back to these things. Hey, people in the room that told me that you need a new CRM system because the one that we have is crap. Here's the one that we got for you. Guess what else it does? It helps you identify white space. It helps you get a single view of the customer. This is what you requested. How do you think they will feel about that? Do you think they'll feel better rather than just dumping stuff on them? I think so too. And luckily, you know, from my perspective as well, as someone employed by a company that sells software, when I think about how I help people, I look at these things that their users have said to them, or that I help them uncover with their teams, and then recommend things. Where's the technology? Here, last column. Why? 2 more important things than technology are people and process. If you do not have those right, it does not bloody matter what solution you implement. I can sell you unicorn making software. It's not gonna make a difference. Magic, even if you had that, it's not gonna change a bloody thing. People and process first. But this is cool when you talk to individual users, but why should someone who's the CEO or the CMO or whatever care about what Billy from the business wants? They don't have to, but it's your job to translate it into something that is meaningful for them. So for this, I propose this thing, business value mapping. Has anyone done this before? A few people. Cool. The reason we do this is because on those annual reports, people send to investors from their company to say, we commit to doing digital transformation, growing sales by 20%, acquiring 10 businesses and being the best globally that we can be. They're going to have some metrics. Now, those metrics are things that investors monitor very, very carefully when they make a decision about investing in that company and boosting that share price. So again, what does our senior leadership team care about? This. If this says, I'll give you some tangible examples. Revenue growth. It's one that is very popular on every single financial statement and investment report that you will ever see. Revenue growth, if you check for your company what they've promised their investors, it's going to be there. Then you look at, okay, what strategy will execute that? You kind of dive a layer deeper into what even IT sometimes are asked to do with their projects. Increase pipeline, right? Add more accounts, find more revenue from somewhere. So we find that something that will enable that is to identify new opportunities in existing accounts. Then here, you look at the exact KPI that that solution and that strategy is going to drive and what that business owner is looking for when thinking about revenue growth. And eventually you tell them what is that technology solution you're going to put in place that's going to give them all that. Let them make sense because it's on the finance reports and their investment reports. And that's what they are looking for. Okay? Very creative exercise to narrow these down. It's not easy, but if you take the financial statement of your company and give it a go, it will be quite fun to try to map your technical assets to all of these wonderful aspirations people have every year. So with that, any questions? No questions. Is any... Okay, I have questions then, no problem. Oh, so things like being frustrated with the fact that, for example, tools aren't loading properly. So people abandon the process of actually putting any data in them because they have to wait a long time for things to load, and they are very slow. Also, the fact that people can't work from home because their organization doesn't enable them to have their work on their personal devices or doesn't give them a mobile phone or is very restrictive like that, and the fact that they have no work-life balance as a result of that, you know, things like that, restrictive type of situations, or the fact that they have no, sometimes it's not related to technology, sometimes it has to do with people. So think about people who would hinder a process from being efficient. Think about 10 million layers in a process of approvals or governance or complicated things that could be more efficient, that could be, if you like, brought together to find one thing that would work for every single part of the organization when we think about those decks of reports that go out before something gets approved. So these would be some of the feelings that we would capture and the needs that people have during the activities they need to do for each single part of that business process flow. But I'll give you some examples of good stuff as well, because I think that is important, and it is important to go through those as part of this process, to recognize them, acknowledge them, and keep them in mind when you make your decision about the new platform. So I've had people that said, actually, collaboration is really good for us. We have great relationships within the company. We really connect with our peers very well. You know, we definitely don't want that to change. And that was a thing with people, process, and technology that enabled that. So it's very good to keep that in mind. Or the fact that their next best action thing worked really well and really helped them be more efficient and do more with their day, because it gave them the insights they needed to not sit and analyze records for hours, right? So those are things that are important. Yes?
Just a forward opinion aside, I'm not sure if it's correct to mention it, but as a part of those factors there, I think what's missing there is a timeline, being realistic, because probably the insinuation is that off-the-shelf product is not going to solve the problem, especially if it requires customization. I mean, let's say, for instance, here in Dynamics, still, out of the box is not going to solve the customization of the business process of the company. And to be doing that transformation in those 5 years, the objectives of the vision of digital transformation are still valid,
Mm-hmm.
but they have to be amended again. So I mean, sometimes that's part of the factors and decisions as well. It's not only about the product is good. Realistically speaking, how long is it going to take you to do this?
I haven't talked about a single product here, by the way.
No,
So.
no, you say it's going to do more revenue, it's going to do this, it's going to do that, but it doesn't say how long effort, how much effort it's going to do it as well.
You can absolutely include that in the business value map. But one thing that I can tell you again from the experience that I've had with very senior stakeholders and the business value mapping team has had is that things like timeline and cost don't become as important when there is, you know, strong reasoning and a very clear way in which you will deliver that revenue increase for the company. But you have to provide that clarity and transparency in order to get there. Yes?
Do you think strong reasoning will overcome politics?
Well, that's a very important point to make. So politics is absolutely one of the big contributors to a lot of things going wrong or being inefficient nowadays. And I think, you know, one of the, I guess we get huge loads of training in trying to change people's minds about things. But for some circumstances where people are paid to do a certain thing or where it's going to mean that they would be out of a job if there's a new thing going on, you can't really change their mindset that much, especially when it puts them at risk. And I think there, again, where you have to try is to appeal to that emotional side, to that personal motivation. Sometimes I have people that come to the technology center and you get a room of mixed roles. And one thing that I ask all the time is not just what people need to do as an organization, but I try and find out what motivates them personally. What are their deliverables? What do they get paid for? What won't they get a bonus for if something doesn't happen this year? I try to squeeze away to figure out how I link what I need to do to that. It's hard, and it takes, you know, you have to build credibility, you have to build trust to understand what is actually creating that reaction of fear, of not wanting to change, of wanting to stick to the same thing. Ultimately, still in that situation, there will be times when things don't change, but luckily, the workplace is changing overall quite a lot, right? Even with some slow movers, even with the public sector and the banking sector, you see them going like crazy for the cloud now because compliance has hit them hard and the news have made it easier for people like me. But, you know, it's still hard work. Anyone else? Yes, please. Mm.
So they don't generally feel they actually reflect the real end user perspective.
The way I go around that is by not involving just a person. I usually try and get groups of 5 and 6 and then hold people accountable to be part of that project and evangelize, get the pulse of their peers, make sure people are included. And I also always recommend that one good thing to really understand what's going on is to go and actually spend some days shadowing with these teams that are going to use the new technology, see how they work, get a feel for yourself of what it's like. Chat to the people that do loads of admin. They will tell you all sorts of interesting things. I had that experience once with a company I was pitching to, and I went 2 days to spend some time with them. It was an insurance provider, and it wasn't as many years ago for this. It sounds quite incredible. So these guys were buying data from agencies that would give them like cold calling lists for people they could call to start, you know, a business opportunity with. This was still a B2B thing, right? B2B company, insurance provider, quite known. I'm not going to say any names. Pays company to get these lists. These lists get delivered, guess what? In Excel files. Now, does anyone do any checking to make sure that data isn't already in the organization? Of course not. All right then. Sorry for that distraction. Thank you, Cortana. You ruined my moment. But yeah, basically, long story short, these guys got these lists in Excel. They didn't do any checking to see if those contacts were already people that they were doing business with. They had these admins, about 4 people, just calling people every day. And they were doing about 400 calls a week. Now, how many deals were they closing from that activity? About 7 a month. 4 people, 400 calls a week. They created an opportunity that was pushed forward, just 7 a month. Now, what did that CEO of that company had an understanding of the fact that that phone bill for that activity was more expensive than the revenue he was generating from it? No. Was it easy to explain and show him, like, would I have known that if I didn't sit with the admin people? No idea whatsoever. So you'll find quite amazing.
Also doing that and actually talking to the people that are doing the job drives quite a lot of invention as well, because those people have usually got the best ideas on how to improve those processes.
Absolutely.
I can't say how many meetings I've been in of evaluating software where the people who actually use the software aren't there. And every time I say, well, you need to have some admins in the room because they use the software, but it's always the senior staff members who are in the room because they know, or the IT, which is probably part of that, think they know what the admins do, and it's very frustrating. So there's a challenge, is actually making sure that you get the right people in the room, the people who actually use the software.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're like me, you're annoying enough to make people like just understand that you just need to sit there for 2 hours and you won't do anything, you'll just sit quietly and look, and you never do that. You just chat people away and involve them in the whole process, right? I'm running out of time, but I wanted to say thank you, and to please remember to stay creative and approach the workplace as somewhere we can still go to have fun, somewhere we can still go to have some child enthusiasm that we've left behind years and years ago, to get people in a room to talk about their feelings, because they are important in the business, all right? And, you know, to just enjoy what we do. And here's one to the admin people. Thank you very much.
Cheers, thank you very much. So we're going to have a break now. As I said earlier, there is all food on the table back there, lots and lots of Subway for you all to tuck into. If we can be roughly 25, 30 minutes, and then we come back for the final session. Thank you. Right, hopefully all of you are well fed and refreshed. Hopefully you like the Subway. Sorry to disappoint anyone who was looking forward to pizza. So my next session this evening really is for an Ignite 2018 recap. I'm going to go through the main kind of big ticket items that were announced a couple of weeks ago now. And then what I will be doing afterwards is running a Q&A. So any questions people have got maybe around some of those announcements, or maybe some wider generic questions you've got around Microsoft 365. So I'm happy to try and answer the best I can. If I don't know anything, obviously I'll highlight if I don't know the answer to your question. So to get started, our focus on the big product that every one of you should be using to its full capacity, which is Teams. There was a bunch of announcements made a couple of weeks ago. A lot of these are now live or due to be released over the next couple of weeks or months. So the biggest ones up here, we've got background blur, if I could say that. As you can see in the bottom right here, which this image has become a bit of a meme, which I'm sure you've all seen the YouTube video or news reports of this guy with his nanny and his kids running in while he's conducting an interview on BBC News. Meeting recordings is now in Teams. Cloud video interop. Some of you who may or may not be using Staff Hub, as you're aware, that is going to be retired and replaced by Home and Shifts inside Teams. So if you are using Staff Hub, it will be replaced in a not too distant future. We've got image annotation, which is the ability to obviously capture images during a Teams or during sessions, and you can annotate and secure them in a secure manner within Teams. And IT admins will be able to set policies and controls on them in terms of where those images, etc., are stored. We've got priority notifications, which is rolling out, which is predominantly aimed at the healthcare environment, where someone wants to get through to someone in an emergency or in a priority manner. Because as you're aware, Teams, although it is instant, obviously people aren't necessarily always in the Teams client, and this is something that is going to be rolled out in the not too distant future. We've also got Teams personal devices and Teams shared devices. Now, the personal devices are around your standard ones like the Yealinks, Plantronics, Jabra, or the Creston units that some of you may or may not be aware of. And the Teams devices, which is more for your Skype room system type systems. So once again, that's Creston's. The Yealink have got devices. HP announced a device. And Logitech also released a device over at Ignite as well. A lot of these devices are either GA currently or will be rolled out over the next couple of weeks or months, depending on availability of them. The phones in Teams is obviously quite a big thing because for a while, predominantly, there were no actual phones out on the market that were available for you to procure in a GA manner. And obviously, Yealink and Creston have now released their devices, which are Teams certified, ready for use. Polycom are on their way. But that's looking like it's going to be next year before they release their devices. Okay. So some other features, which once again, these all around Teams. The long-awaited Teams APIs were announced, which obviously is a big hurrah at this time, and we're waiting to see what a lot of the other vendors release in terms of products, specifically around contact centers, auto attendance, or advanced call queues that a lot of people will be looking for that obviously Teams doesn't do natively within the Microsoft Cloud. There is the task module integration, which is a preview that they're releasing shortly. The biggest area, which I'm sure all of you are using, is bots. I don't know if you saw a lot of these announcements, but there is a new framework for the bots inside Teams, which enhances what used to be available in the Skype for Business. And obviously a lot of that's packaged within Visual Studio as well. Data loss prevention, which has generally been a big blocker for adoption of some of the areas of Teams, in particular around the finance or areas that are deep and heavy on compliance. This is something that is coming. It's not released yet, but hopefully by the end of this year, there should be the data loss prevention to enhance what you're already doing, obviously in Exchange or SharePoint Online via DLP. There is also going to be the ability to do dynamic group membership, which obviously is the ability to have people members rather than manually obviously adding or inviting members to those teams, either via the dynamic distribution list that you may or may not have configured. There's also going to be the ability to template what teams will actually be able to create, and a lot of that is driven off of the Graph APIs. And then finally, the full ability to manage teams. So currently today, a lot of you, without doing kind of in-depth knowledge, won't necessarily know how many teams or the team sprawls that may or may not have happened within inside your tenancies. And what this will allow you to do as an admin is actually go into the console and you'll be able to see all the teams from an administrative point of view without obviously looking at other tools or deep analysis in terms of those sites that may or may not have been created. Some of the wider announcements out there that, as you may be aware, on-premises is still not dead. The whole wave of suites of products are due out in this quarter. So that's Skype for Business, that is SharePoint, and that is Exchange. Thank you, Steve. Office 2019 has also been, I think it's released for people that are volume licensing. It's not there in Office 365 yet, but it is due soon. Surface Hub 2s, for all of you that have got your Surface Hub 1s set up in your office, they're due out early next year. Hopefully you're all looking to upgrade them, or you're biding your time and to get your Surface Hub 2s. And then one of the interesting things that I picked up on, which I don't think was made a big deal of, was the ability that Alexa is going to start being integrated into Skype. And that's consumer Skype, not Skype for Business at this stage. Microsoft Search, which was something that was announced last year as a preview, which is in essence enhancing Bing as the de facto search engine across all your products. So that's SharePoint, that's Exchange, and that is Skype for Business as well. And then further LinkedIn integration for all you people that are on LinkedIn. There is going to be deeper integration between that and Office 365, and that is predominantly around the documents that you may or may not be collaborating on. You can do that you will be able to do that in LinkedIn not too far from now. There is also the Cortana Skills Kit, which is going back to the bot framework, is something that's going to be available to you. So when you're building your bots, Cortana and the AI side of that will obviously enhance in terms of what you want to do or what you may or may not configure for your bots. OneDrive Files on Demand, which obviously is, I'm sure, used by a lot of you on your Windows devices, is now released on Mac as well. So any of you MacBook fanatics out there will be able to do OneDrive on demand. And then one of the interesting areas, I thought it was anyway, was around the Windows virtual desktops. Now, as some of you may be aware, obviously Microsoft did have a product up until about a year ago, which was removed because they signed an agreement with Citrix at that stage. They depreciated their own product in favour of working with Citrix, and this product, in essence, is based upon that partnership that they have got with them. The interesting part on that, though, is a lot of the licensing for this will be included with any of you on the Microsoft 365 SKUs. So that includes the F1 for the kiosks, for your Windows 10S, or the M365 E3 and E5. A lot of the licensing for this will actually be included if you're an M365 subscriber. So the only, in terms of additional cost, is for the machines that you'll be hosting in Azure. So for a lot of you, there may potentially be room for cost savings. This is preview at this time, and that preview, I believe, is going to be up and running in the next couple of weeks, but it is something that may be of interest for any of you that are big VDI estates out there. And then Dynamics, which is my least favourite subject. Sorry, mate.
Sorry, the one when you talk about licensing, one thing I picked up on Exchange.
Mm-hmm.
You can only set our peers, you can only buy those volume license once, so it's a small business.
So there are changes coming to Exchange 2019, so that is one of them. The hardware requirements, which I'll probably divert to Steve in a second in terms of what those are as well. But there's also, my understanding is that's being where you get your hybrid use benefits for Exchange 2016, 2013, that's changing for Exchange 2019 as well. And then Dynamics Artificial Intelligence is something that's coming. So for anyone of you guys that use CRM, or it sounds like Cortana may be taking over and doing your sales for you, which would be very interesting if that actually does happen. Excuse me. Some of the other items, which is this predominantly around Azure, the biggest thing that I thought was interesting was the password-free sign-in. So building upon Windows 10 Hello, the ability to actually sign into your device without actually putting in a password. So this isn't just you look at your screen, this is you can authenticate via your app on the authenticator, via your mobile phone as well. Coming back to obviously something that was mentioned earlier, that at the moment Windows Hello looks at your face, or you've got the fingerprint reader. Microsoft are looking at other ways to authenticate, and furthermore, this is beyond just Windows 10 as well. This is also for apps that are in the cloud, for Office 365 apps. Okay. So one of the other ones up here, the Azure Data Box. So any of you that are familiar with AWS and their Glacier service, this is Microsoft's offering to compete against that, which in essence for organizations that maybe have low bandwidth and lots of data that they want to get to Microsoft Cloud very quickly. This service, in essence, they turn up either with a very big disk or a very big truck to get copies of your data to port it into the Microsoft Cloud. This is their version of that. And they've also released the Data Box, which at the moment is 100 terabytes in terms of its size. Now, obviously, if your data sets are bigger than that, there would be multiple drives. These drives are secure, military encrypted, etc., bomb-proof, etc., in terms of protection. They are also looking at bigger versions. So one of the previews are 1 petabyte boxes they are looking at, but this is only a preview at this stage. And for a lot of you, you should all be Hyper-V customers, not VMware. There are lots more assessments and tools coming in Hyper-V that will allow you to easier migrate your workloads to Azure from Hyper-V. And then coming back to the 2019 suite of products, Windows Server 2019 is GA and is available for any of you guys that are still holding behind on Windows Server 2016. It's now time to start going up to the next versions. There's bigger GPUs in Azure for any of you data analysts out there that are consuming large amounts of processing power, larger disks. ExpressRoute is changing in terms of its offering. So what this actually means is for anybody that predominantly is a multinational company that uses predominantly, they would use the MPLS networks to connect to each other. Microsoft are starting to offer up their network services via a subscription service that you would go over Microsoft's backbone rather than subscribing with another third party. So this builds upon, because obviously ExpressRoute had a take-up and very specific use cases, and as Microsoft are one of the big players in terms of their network connectivity around the world, they're offering these services to you as a consumer, and not for a consumer, as a business, to be able to provide better connectivity to your multinational companies. The Intune MAM wrappers is improving, so it's not just going to be the Microsoft apps. You're going to be able to bring third-party apps, and they're going to allow the third parties to develop and bring those apps into the Intune MAM policies. And then finally, Windows Autopilot for existing devices. Now, I'm sure all of you have probably signed up for your new machines from one of the hardware vendors, and this is really enhancing for devices that you may already have that you want to enroll in the Autopilot program. So this is Autopilot previously was for brand new machines that you ordered, so they were sent to you, obviously built and ready for your configuration. This is going backwards in terms of what you've already got and looking at bringing that into the Autopilot services that Microsoft offer. Now, I know that was a very, 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 very quick whirlwind in terms of a lot of the features, etc., that was announced. What questions have you got? Because I thought this would be better to probably turn this around and see if there was things that people would like to go into more detail, or even just general topics or conversations that you'd like to ask. So I'll do my very, very best to answer those questions for you. Yes, sir.
Those MAM wrappers that you're talking about.
Yep.
Isn't that always there, but just no one developed?
So my personal take on it, that they weren't truly there in terms of it, because it was always the Microsoft products, because Microsoft built them and added them. This is their attempt to actually try and enhance that further, and like you say, make that more user-friendly to the developers to be able to add those protections to them. So this enhances what they previously had. I can't give you much more details on that because it wasn't too much. I haven't got the details to hand for that. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, you mentioned the 2019 on-prem.
Mm-hmm.
So have you seen anything yet on kind of hardware requirements for those and licensing requirements? And where I'm going with this is, have Microsoft sort of increased those requirements and or costs, i.e. For a lot of businesses probably pushing it out of realistic cost and so on, so they would push them in the direction of 365?
So that is,
Slightly cynical, I appreciate, but
yeah, sorry. So the question was, in terms of the server specifications that the Windows 2019 suite of products have got, is it Microsoft's intent really to try and push you more towards the cloud by making the resources more heavy in terms of what you're used to? The short answer is the Microsoft stance on this is really that is a recommendation in terms of those hardware specifications. However, as you're all aware in the real world, obviously you base it on what you can do, and you can use the calculators to obviously get the best of your configuration in terms of where you want those products to be. To answer the question though, it does feel in some ways that potentially, yes, that's where they're trying to push you, because not only that, this is the 1st of October, you had the price increases as well for the on-prem products. So as we're all aware, Microsoft made the statement it's cloud first, mobile first a number of years ago, and obviously they're going to continue to push and develop the cloud products before they develop the on-prem products in terms of their product cycles. Okay, Steve.
Just one point to add to that. If you're sizing it based on best practices, then you'll usually achieve those numbers anyway.
Mhm.
128 gig, 192 gig of RAM. So if you're doing, no one deploys at 8 gig of RAM Exchange Server.
No. Mhm. Cool. Yes, sir.
With all the teams in hyperspace, is Skype dead now?
So the question was, with all the teams' announcements, is Skype dead? The short answer is no. So Skype for Business as on premises has definitely got a longevity in the market. Skype for Business 2015 and 2019 are both in support until 2025. So there will be developments in that space, and the next version will have the ability to obviously migrate to Teams as well. Skype for Business Online, obviously it's a lot less unclear. The big announcement on that one was tenants that are sub 500 seats in size as of the 1st of October, I think it was again, that any new tenants will not have Skype for Business in them. And that's sub 500 users only.
Microsoft Teams, is there a roadmap for channels permissions?
For what permission, sorry?
Channels permissions.
Challenge permission.
Channels, yeah. So in order to compete with the Slack,
Yep.
Microsoft Teams, fortunately, once you create one team,
Mm-hmm.
all the channels are public to all the members. Is there a roadmap to, in order to compete with the Slack?
So really the question is there a roadmap for Microsoft Teams to do private chat pretty much is what you're... Channels, private channels.
You have to create sub-channels.
Yes.
But those channels, they could have permissions of which members
Mm-hmm.
will access and which ones not. So at the moment, Teams doesn't do it, but Slack can do it.
Yep.
And that's the competition.
So the short answer is yes, there is a roadmap for that. There wasn't an announcement specifically made at Ignite for that, but it is something that has been picked up, and I'm pretty certain on user voice recently, it is something that the product group are looking at. I can offer no timelines on when that's likely to be though, but it is something that is being looked at, yes.
Well, free assessments in Azure, so is that around closing existing services and migrating to sort of PaaS, or IaaS, the direct migration VMs, or?
Okay, so the question was for the assessments for Hyper-V to Azure, does that cover predominantly IaaS or PaaS? My knowledge on this one is it's predominantly around IaaS, because obviously PaaS would mean that you're looking at redeploying your server estate rather than just migrating. So it builds upon obviously the Maps tool that you may or may not be aware of already that's out there, that just does an analysis of your environment. And really the point of it is to then right size where you're going to go into Azure. So if your server's 4 gig and 8 cores and 100 gig of disk space, what it'll do is it'll make suggestions based on obviously the Azure servers that are there for you. PaaS is always an area that I personally believe is more about redeploying and better ways of migrating your workloads rather than just lifting and shifting the tin. Okay. Yes?
Is there any discussion around the pain switch between organisations and teams?
The pain. So the question was there any announcements around the pain of switching between tenants for their idea of federation that obviously you're used to and love in Skype for Business? The short answer is this is an area that's being looked at, but I can offer you nothing more on that at this point in time. That experience they want to improve, but I think there's more challenges to it to be able to get to the level that you're after.
What is the pain? Because obviously if you use the client to switch, it's like signing out of a browser and signing into another.
Yep.
I find it quite seamless.
You do, but if I give that as my personal experience, if I sign out and sign into, I don't know, one with Microsoft that obviously they're sharing with me, can't do voice if I've got enterprise voice enabled in my Teams one. I can't join the conference if I've got a conference in, and I also can't communicate with the people back in Crown. So I need to switch back to my Crown one, and then I miss out the conversation I'm having in the Microsoft channel. So there are challenges. And yeah, some users don't see that as a challenge. A lot of orgs that I'm speaking to actually are quite insular, so they're not federating. Actually, they don't see federation as a challenge or a blocker. Yep.
Did I read somewhere that Scott Business 2019 was to support team meetings?
So the question was, did you hear that Skype for Business 2019 was going to support Teams meeting join? Now, this isn't the Skype for Business 2019 feature. It's actually going to be released to Skype for Business 2015 as well. And what this is the ability to migrate your meetings to Teams. Now, obviously, there will still be a requirement to have the add-on PSTN conferencing if you're after the PSTN. And what this will enable you via policies to be able to do is your Skype for Business users, IM Presence, Enterprise Voice, but if you want your meetings, they'll be migrated to Teams. Skype for Business client will obviously still have the notifications in the Meetings tab, and obviously your Outlook will be notified in the same way. And what will happen is if you clicked on it in Skype for Business, it will then open up Teams for you, and then obviously you join your meeting within the Teams client. That is something that is roadmapped. I think really, because I've watched that session quite a few times now, that it was felt that this is something that's coming potentially by later this year, early next year. Because it's one of the biggest blockers that I would suggest in terms of trying to drive adoption. Because if I use Crown as an example, we are an enterprise voice Skype for Business house on-prem. We very much want to go to Teams, but obviously we've got challenges with geo restrictions and things like that for our voice. And we'd like to start moving our meetings over to Teams. Cool. Any other questions? Alex?
You mentioned meeting recording.
Yep.
That's just if the user feels like recording it, they can record it. Is there any timeline for mandatory, like always on meeting recording for compliance and regulators?
So the question was, the meeting recordings up there is very much like the user feels towards doing it. Is there any controls that you as an administrator will be able to define that those meetings are recorded? The short answer is it's supposed to, I believe it's supposed to be there, or soon it's going to be there, but I can't offer you the exact detail on that at this stage. Steve, do you have it? Is there anything else that you heard on that point? No. So, cool. So I'm not missing anything there. Cool.
Do you cover Power BI?
I personally don't, so I don't know much more beyond kind of the surface. Alan, do you know much of Power BI that you can step up for?
They're changing the workspaces so they don't automatically create Office 365 groups.
Mm-hmm.
They're tightening content packs in favour of apps. If I want to, once I publish my packages, is there an alternative to having an on-premises data gateway? Because that's still relevant. Is that still, you have to have one? I think you still need that for the time being. Yeah, if your data's on-premises, then you still need that.
Presumably that's the same for Power Apps as well. Power BI.
Any access to data that's on-prem is staying the same. You can do anything with the chain.
Any other questions from anyone? Cool. No technical questions unanswered? Free consultancy for the next 10 minutes? No? Cool. Well, apart from that, thank you very much for coming this evening. I'd just like to say thank you for Carolina and Alex for their sessions earlier on. It was very much appreciated. And also I'd like to say thank you to Jason, who's not here tonight, and Steve as well for assistance in getting this all organised with me, because I know this is difficult at times to be able to get everyone together, and with all our busy day jobs and that as well, it's always appreciated to have a great team to work with as well. So a big thank you to Jason and Steve as well, please. And lastly, obviously, we won't be able to run these user groups without obviously the attendance of all of you. So I'd like to, if you could all give yourselves a pat on the back as well, please. Thank you. And have a safe journey home. And if you've got any other questions, obviously I'm still around for the next few minutes anyway. But apart from that, thank you very much and good night.